fantastic stuff to share with us. Let's welcome Youyou. Thank you, Youyou.
Thanks, Brian, for the introduction. He's actually summarized it well, so I'm going to be repeating a lot of what he has said. So yeah, I'm a personality psychologist, social psychologist studying personality. And personality is an everyday term. Like we frequently describe our own and other people's personality, how outgoing someone is, how extroverted someone is, how shy, how nice. So these are the words that we use on a daily basis. But being able to judge someone's personality in a scientific way has a lot of challenges because personality is not like height or weight. It's a latent construct that can only be measured indirectly using various tools. It's an important concept, though, because we make decisions in our life based on perceptions of people's personality. We choose friends, choose partners, our colleagues, as well as our president partially based on perceptions of personality. Some people elected Trump because they like his personality. So being able to accurately assess personality has a lot of implications for our personal and professional lives. So today I'm going to talk about a number of ways that we can measure personality. And I start by introducing some traditional ways of doing it that mostly rely on human judgments. And then I'll go into the meat of this talk, discussing how as people started to use social media and generate more and more personal data, we can now infer personality from their digital behavior without relying much on human perception. So the most popular and established way of measuring personality is through self-report. Self-report asks people to fill out a questionnaire describing, rating themselves on a list of statements. Here's an example of a self-report questionnaire. The first item, I am the life of a party, assesses extroversion, for example. So on a scale of 1 to 5, how accurately does that statement describe you? And here's another example, asking people to choose from 2 statements. Which one applies to you more? Like, I have a natural talent for influencing people versus I'm not very good at influencing people. Can anyone guess what this questionnaire measures by reading those statements? Yeah, it's pretty obvious that this is the narcissism scale. And the scale is called the Narcissistic Personality Inventory. And there's actually an interesting fact about it. So this questionnaire consists of 40 items, and so it does take some time to go through. But a couple of years ago, a group of researchers came up with an alternative way of measuring personality. And they only ask one question: are you a narcissist? And they and they found that, interestingly, this one item questionnaire correlated pretty strongly with the longer version. And we tend to think that narcissism is a negative trait, but you kind of need to come up with many different questions to get people talking about it. But it turns out that narcissists don't mind telling people about them narcissism at all. And it kind of reminds me of how, since the start of the election cycle, there has been many articles written by psychologists like me trying to analyze Trump's personality. They were gathering all sorts of evidence about from his videos and speeches, trying to show that he's narcissistic. And it just occurs to me that maybe we can just simply ask him, are you a narcissist? And he'll likely tell you that he is, saving us all the time from trying to analyze him. So this is self-report using questionnaire. And the second type of personality measure that we use is peer report. So it uses the same questionnaire, but instead of asking the target himself, we would ask the people that know him, like his friend, partner, or classmate and colleague. But it also uses questionnaire. And besides using surveys and questionnaires, sometimes psychologists also look at people's behaviors, because ultimately personality manifests itself through behaviors in everyday life. And typically, behavioral data on personality is collected by bringing participants into the lab, have them perform some tasks, and interact with each other a little bit, and then you will record these interactions and later have research assistants watch these videos and code the behaviors in the videos, like how many times this person laughed or how many eye contact they made with each other, like that. And later you would map these codings of behaviors onto specific personality trait. And sometimes researchers will also go into people's real life looking for traces or residuals of behaviors. For example, the way that someone decorates his bedroom or office will indicate how well organized he is. And this person's music collection or the books he reads would also indicate his personality. And behavioral traces of personality also exist in the digital space, like people's personal blogs, your social media profile, the pictures they post, the things you've written. And these are all actual types of data source that psychologists have been referred to for personality assessment. But keep in mind that all of these methods have been based on human judgment. So you would need actually someone to go and look at the blog, the room, and make holistic inferences from these data. So these are the three representative personality assessment methods. There are many more, but these are the three most frequently used ones, and they all have shown really good reliability and validity. However, the downside is that they are very expensive and time-consuming, especially the behavioral methods. Setting up a study, bringing people into the lab, having your research assistant code the behaviors is a very time-consuming process. And also you have to pay the participants as well as your RA's salary. And the same goes with self-report and peer report. You have to pay the participants for the time they spend on the questionnaire. And if it's a long one, people might not pay much attention, so you tend to get data that's not so good quality. So we want to change that. And the new methods that my research team proposes is actually an extension of the behavioral methods. But we want to take advantage of all the digital data that people generate when they browse internet or use social media, and that already exists and ready to be analyzed. So our goal is to build a series of models, statistical models that automatically infer personality from these digital data so we can eliminate the need for human coding or human judgment. Type of data that I work with is Facebook likes. So if you're an active Facebook user, you might recognize this thumb up button, which means that somebody likes it. It's everywhere. You see it everywhere. And you can like a wide range of stuff on Facebook, like a person, a interest, a brand, a book, a restaurant, and many others. So likes really represent a wide range of preferences and behavior that contain information indicative of people's personality. And for likes here, I'm talking about those public pages that you can follow and like on Facebook, not those likes associated with your like status updates, your individual like private status updates. So the personality traits that we want to assess are based on a well-established personality theory, the Big Five model. That says that there are five core traits core personality traits that explain most of the variability in human behavior. And this includes openness, which is how open someone is to new experiences and adventures. And the second one is conscientiousness, being well organized and disciplined versus being sloppy. And the third one is extroversion. And the next one is agreeableness, being nice and considerate versus like hostile towards people. And the final one is neuroticism, which is essentially emotional stability. So these five traits together can define the person quite well, can tell us quite well who this person is. And here's an overview of how our methods work. The overall framework is quite simple. So to build a series of personality models, we need two pieces of information. We first need a group of participants to provide their self-reported personality. So this is our ground truth in the model. And we also need these participants' Facebook likes. And when we have a large enough training sample, we can build a series of accurate models, one for each personality trait. And when we have those models, we can apply them to any future samples of participants. We only need to collect Facebook likes from them, which takes 1 second as opposed to like 20 minutes when they spend on doing self-reported questionnaire. So we would input those digital footprints from these future samples into the models, and the model would then output the predictive personality for these people. So the data that I used came from a project called the My Personality project. My Personality was a popular Facebook third-party paid Facebook application launched and developed in 2006 by my colleague David Stillwell, and it allows users to take free psychological tests. There are 25 tests of them, and including personality. And these users can receive feedback about themselves. So because it's free and you get to know who you are, so people are very motivated to take these tests. And the app got popular really quickly over the course of 5 years. Over 6 million people participated, and about 40% of them agreed to share their scores with us for research purposes, as well as their Facebook profile information. This includes things like their friends list, their status updates, their pictures. And this is back in 2006 when privacy wasn't so much an issue. It was an issue, but like Facebook had relaxed policies about what we can collect with users' permission. Now it's not possible anymore at this time of year. And the two pieces, as I said, the two pieces of information that I used was people's self-reported personality and their likes data. So for self-reported personality, most users, all of the users in our application completed the same questionnaire, but of different lengths. And to maximize the reliability of the questionnaire and potentially the accuracy of the model, I limited my analysis to those people who had finished the full 100-item questionnaire. And for the likes data, I represented them in a matrix format characterizing which users had what likes. And because our models are going to leverage the association between liking certain things and having a particular personality profile, I reduced the matrix. It was necessary to have like enough examples of liking certain things and a particular personality profile. So I reduced the matrix so that each user had at least 20 likes in our sample, and each like was associated with at least 20 users. And the final sample consisted of about 70,000 people. And of course, we did some dimension reduction on the likes matrix. And finally, we used a very simple rich regression model predicting each of the personality traits from the likes. Yeah. No, not at all. Yeah. So just the likes, and it of course helps. It definitely will help if we haven't tried them yet. I've tried to train the model, say, on old people and predict personality for younger people. It works as well, actually. Yeah, so I have confidence in that. Inputting more information would definitely improve the accuracy. So I also applied a tenfold cross-validation to avoid overfitting, so taking 90% of the data at a time as a training sample, and then apply that to the rest of the participants to test for accuracy. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, actually, so I would say that our sample would be much more representative than a sample that's done in a lab, because traditionally personality has been collected in like college labs, and these are the most biased example of samples, I would say, because they were like educated and private universities that people tend to be high on conscientiousness and extroversion and neuroticism, and these samples tend to be much biased than the general samples. Here we have Like in the entire sample, we have about 3 million people, and they come from all sorts of places in the world. So this is actually, if anything, more representative. Yeah. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. So I definitely look at the distribution of personality. As I said, it's actually more widely distributed than any other samples that we have seen. And I'm going to talk about it next, in the next couple of slides, about how we built the models on people with a 100-item questionnaire, then apply them to people completing other lengths of questions. And it still works, and the accuracy did not, decrease. So to evaluate the accuracy of the models, I correlated the personality predicted from likes and with people's self-reported, of course, only on the test samples. So the accuracy criteria here is the correlation, and here are the results. So for openness, the models performed the best. The correlation was about 0.44, and for the other four traits, about 0.43. And this is likely because that I show you some examples of how the likes were diagnostic of openness. Like open people would like atheism, David Bowie, and William Shakespeare, while conservative people like Republican stuff. So these traits, openness, openness is in fact in reality a very hard to judge trait. So human accuracy tend not to be very high when you use human judges, but it's highly, those signals that are diagnostic of openness tend to be very visible in the digital space. So it's a surprising finding that um, our models were especially good at being open. Here are some other examples of likes characteristic of neuroticism, and some of them are really obvious, like I overthink things way too much. It's definitely an emotionally unstable person. But some of the association not so obvious actually. So liking In-N-Out burgers is related to being calm and relaxed. Like no one would think of that. Yeah, an interesting fact is that there are a lot of long statements of pages that I didn't even know that they exist, but apparently many people like them and resonate with them, and these are emotionally unstable people. So next, I want to put these numbers in a context to better understand what these numbers mean. Like, are they accurate? Are they high? So to do that, I compare the accuracy of our models with the peer report accuracy. So looking at the judgments made by people who know these participants in real life. And again, there are some users of the My Personality application that invited their friends to rate their personality using the same questionnaire. So I took these people and correlated their judgments of the target and the self-reported personality. But in order to compare these two sets of correlations fairly, I corrected for attenuation in the correlation due to measurement error. So both sets of correlation were boosted as a result to be compared together. And here's the accuracy of our model plotted against the number of Facebook likes someone has on their profile. So as you can see, the accuracy increases as we have more information, like someone has more likes on his profile. And next, we want to map the accuracy of the peer report onto this curve to compare. So we know that in our sample, the peer report accuracy is about 0.49 on average after correction for attenuation. And this is equivalent of if someone has 90 to 100 Facebook likes, and we use our models to make a prediction. I also borrowed the results. Yes? Yeah. Yeah. Accuracy is the correlation between the prediction. Yeah. Yeah, this is just a correlation. Yeah. I also borrowed the results from a meta-analysis looking at different kinds of human judges to see how the accuracy varies and to see how our models do. So we found that having 10 likes would be enough for our models to be better than a work colleague. Having 70 likes would be enough to be comparable to a friend or a roommate. And having 150 likes, our models would do better than a family members. And finally, having 300 likes, that we can predict better than a romantic. So all of these analyses shows that it's possible to use the models to be compared to a traditional method. So I want to emphasize that peer report is a frequently used method in psychology. Like we do actually resort to these people for personality assessments, and with enough likes, we can do better than an established method. So far, all the analyses have been based on users having at least 20 likes and likes associated with at least 20 users. And to improve the models, I want to be able to more efficiently utilize the entire database of likes. So in the previous analysis, a lot of unpopular likes got left behind because of our rule of reducing the likes matrix. So one way of utilizing the entire database was through collaborative filtering, a technique commonly used in recommendation system. So the goal is to predict what a user would have liked from what he's already liked based on frequencies of likes appearing together in a user's list. For example, if many people like The Daily Show and The Last Week Tonight together, then having either one of them will help us decide that this person might like the other thing as well. And this will help us input more information for each individual and boost the sample sizes. So specifically, we took about 2 million people in our database and their likes to construct a co-occurrence matrix characterizing which likes tend to appear together. And then by taking the cross product between the co-occurrence matrix and each user's individual like vector, and we can we can predict what this person may have liked. It's sort of like missing data imputation. And I'm still including, only including people with more than 20 likes, but now we have a much larger likes database than before. So as expected, our accuracy increased slightly. So now openness, we have 0.49, correlation with self-report, and the other 4 traits also increased slightly. And more importantly, using this kind of method, our accuracy did not depend so much on how many likes you have anymore because of this collaborative filtering technique that we're able to guess what a person with minimal number of likes would have liked. So far, I've demonstrated how to predict the big 5 personality traits from Facebook likes using the My Personality data. It's reasonable to think that this whole protocol can be extended and replicated to predict other psychological traits as well. Because ultimately, that's our goal, to replace self-report in assessing any kinds of psychological traits. But doing that will require the collection of a large sample of self-reports, which takes time and is expensive again. And the sample size that's used in my analysis beyond most researchers' budget and time. And also, we use the long 100-item questionnaire that takes a long time to complete. And also another restriction that we only apply the models to people with at least Facebook 20 likes. So in the next couple of slides, I want to talk about how we can optimize the method to make it more feasible and replicable for researchers in practice. So I started testing a series of conditions under which we can still build useful models, but without incurring considerable cost. So I tested building the models using a short questionnaires, and using smaller samples, and applying the models to people with minimal number of digital footprints, in the case Facebook. So I started by building the model using a short questionnaire. So everything else stayed the same, the setup, the modeling technique, except that instead of using people who completed a long 100-item questionnaire, we replaced them with people who completed a short 20-item questionnaire. And the results are here. And it's interesting that the accuracy did not decrease much at all. And for openness, there's a 5.05 decrease, and for the other four traits, between 0.01 to 0.03. And this is, in comparison with the maximum accuracy achieved using the full 100-item model. So, and this shows that even we can use a short questionnaire, which takes less time to complete, which means less money to pay for the participant, and it will still work. And next, I built the models using smaller samples. So I took subsets of data of different sizes, ranging from 1,000 participants to 10,000 participants, and built the models using these subsamples. And here's an example of the result of openness. So the line, the horizontal line at the top represents the maximum accuracy achieved in the perfect condition. So 100 item, the full sample. So this is like a baseline that we can compare to. And the bottom two lines were the accuracy for models built using smaller samples, like from 1,000 participants to 10,000 ones in the interval. So as you can see, there are definitely benefits of having larger sample sizes, but decreasingly so. And even with just 1,000 participants, you can have a pretty 1,000 participants and 20-item questionnaire. You can still have a pretty decent accuracy. Yeah, sure. Yeah. Right. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Personality.
Yes.
Parameter.
Yes. That's correct.
So what extent are what thinking when you are doing the intelligent reduction part and the fact that when you go from the light to the aggregate variable, you then are doing the regression.
Yeah.
Those steps that you could have saying.
The procedure is the same. The variables, the dimensions are of course different because of the smaller sample size, but the procedures were the same.
So you could also look at variable.
What do you mean by an uncertainty?
So in the same way that you
Yeah.
define openness as some aggregate of the answer to 20 of the questions in the questionnaire, you kind of transform those answers to a number. That is now your number for openness.
Yes.
And so you could say, well, the way in which I do that transformation is that I have a transition of any one of them.
Yeah.
So you are doing something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, definitely. Like playing with the algorithm, you mean like doing different kinds of combinations of modelings in predicting personality. Is that what you mean? So.
I was just trying to figure out if you had changed the procedure.
Oh, okay.
You could have used different methods.
Yeah. We haven't, but it's definitely something to try. But I'm just showing here that with a very simple algorithm, that's what we can achieve. Yeah, it was consistent.
The reason why you have changes is that when
right. But changing the sample size.
Some changes, and those changes end up.
Yeah, I could. Yeah, that's fine. And so that was the result for openness, and these are the results for the other four traits. the patterns vary a bit across the other 4 traits, but generally, even with smaller training samples, the accuracy can still approach the maximum accuracy that we were able to see. So finally, we wanted to apply the models to users with small number of likes, and in this case, those users with less than 20 likes. And I plotted the accuracy against the number of likes, and we found that under 20 likes, the accuracy started to correlate with the number of likes you have again. But the line starts to flatten after 10 likes. And it's interesting how even with just 1 like, we could still have an accuracy between 0.1 and 0.15. It's not high, but it's just amazing how it did not drop to 0 with even 1 like. Yes. Yeah. A 0. We've tried that. Yeah. So there's no correlation if it's like random. That's the models, the accuracy that's achieved by the models. I mentioned before in perfect conditions, like the full sample, like 110,000 people, and using the 100-item questionnaire. So this is just to compare with how much decrease we would get using more stringent conditions. Yeah. So this is the result for the 100-item questionnaires being applied to people with less than 20 likes. And on the right, you have the 20-item model. So the pattern looks similar. So as we get beyond, say, 7 or 8 likes, it starts to approach the maximum accuracy. So this shows that so when you want to apply to, say, future samples of participants, but they didn't have many likes, it would still work, although the accuracy would decrease, but it would still work. So far I've demonstrated this method and talked a lot about the potential of it. And next, I want to briefly show you 2 examples where this specific technique is applied in actual research, like in practice. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. 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 Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm gonna get to this by giving you examples, but to tell you more about the usefulness. So usually self-report has a reliability of 0.7 or 0.8. So that's the maximum correlation or like test retest reliability that you could get using self-report. And self-report has been used forever for like looking at studying personality using for different kinds of purposes. So that's the maximum effect that you can get. And you could sort of look at that as a benchmark for how useful that is. And our measure is around 0.4, so that's sort of the usefulness of it. But yeah, and next I'm going to show you some examples where I actually use this measure in research, like to study personality. So I just published a paper looking at the similarity in personality between romantic partners. So I measured a couple's personality from their Facebook likes and then compare the similarity between them. So this would be an example of studying personality in the context of close relationships using this measure instead of self-report. This question had been studied using self-report for a long time, but we identify a specific bias and show that not only can our method replace self-report in studying this question, but also it has a lot of advantages that were not covered by self-report. Another example would be a research piece done by my colleague Sandra Matz So she was looking at the tailored advertising based on psychological traits. So using our models, she identified people of high extroversion versus low extroversion, and she created tailored commercial content for these two different groups of people. So it's sort of like putting people into bins like high versus low extroversion. And the results were amazing. Those personality optimized advertisements were shared 3 times more often than a generic one. So it really shows that people genuinely enjoyed the ads content that are better suited for their personality. And these results, of course, have a lot of commercial implications. Like in the past, micro-targeting based on psychological trait has not been very feasible because it's impossible for marketing companies to ask all the potential consumers to do a questionnaire and know their personality. So most of their ads targeting has been based on easily observable attributes like demographics. But with this kind of technique, we can now infer psychological traits from an existing data and to help companies better market their product. Here's another example of tailored ads targeting campaign. My previous lab had done with Hilton. So they were creating differential content for people of high extroversion versus high agreeableness, not versus, but different groups of people. And for high extroversion, they were talking about having fun, like partying, but for high agreeable people, they were talking about family and relationships. So far, I've been talking about predicting personality from one type of digital behavior, the Facebook likes. And there are definitely many other options. And my colleagues and collaborators have been playing with a few other type of digital data. And I want to show you an example of those. So here we could assess personality from the language that people use in their Facebook status updates. As many of you may know, status updates is about posting your feelings and thinking and life events. And here are 2 word clouds showing contrasting extroverts versus introverts choices of words. So extroverts like to talk about party, weekend, girls, and introverts, on the other hand, are talking about internet, so long stuff like computer. And we also were able to assess personality from people's profile pictures. And I love these images of aggregate faces showing the most introverted people like with glasses, but the most extroverted people with makeup. And here's another example for assessing political orientation from profile pictures. Can anyone guess which one is the liberal? Which one is the conservative? Like the right or the left one is the liberal? The left is the liberal? It's actually the opposite. The angry guy is the liberal. So we are all angry people. Yeah, conservative people are like nice, smiling, and the liberals are having this poker face. It's interesting to see those contrasts in actual data. So we are able to actually predict intelligence from profile as well, but I don't have the pictures of it. Intelligence more sensitive because like, a lot of people don't want to be shown. And for political orientation, it's an AUC of 0.7. For intelligence, I don't remember, but for personality, it's not very high. It's about 0.2 from profile. And we could also do sexual orientation. That's really high. That's about 0.9, and that's way higher than human perception. Like humans not very good at judging gay versus straight people, but profile pictures and algorithm is really good. Yeah, so that's all I have for you. Do we have time for questions? Yeah. Thank you. Yes. Yes. No, that's not what it means. And it means that our prediction explains 25% of the variance in the actual data, which doesn't mean anything. I mean, that's why I compare that to the peer report accuracy to see, to give you a better sense of how the models are doing compared with a method that's commonly used. Yeah, so it doesn't tell us the chance that you will get it right. Yes. Yeah, yeah. Because openness, a lot of things that indicate of openness, like being artistic and being liberal, they are very visible on Facebook. Like people talk about politics and their interests, artistic interests, all the time on Facebook. But for the other traits, like neuroticism, is an emotional trait. Like people, there aren't that many like internal things that are visible on Facebook. People don't mention that much about their emotions, but I would definitely think like private things like Facebook messages, like the things that you say in private with your friends, those things too would definitely carry more emotional component that would be better predictive of like neuroticism. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so the analysis that I presented were limited to US participants only. But I have looked at, say, the global model, like putting everybody together, and the accuracy was pretty much similar, but it could also be due to that the people who participated, who used the applications were like global people. They understand English and they were into those popular culture that were like widely known globally. So it's definitely necessary for us to develop the different models for different cultural groups, like for Chinese people, like for Asian people, and it's definitely necessary, and that's why I limited the analysis to U.S. participants only. Yeah. 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 Yeah, that's what we are getting at, and there are some efforts in predicting health outcome already using Twitter data, like Twitter predictive personality and predicting health outcome. It's already being done, and that is sort of what we're getting at, to apply these techniques more and more into practice and looking at consequential outcomes. Yes. Yeah. 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 Yeah, so actually Cambridge Analytica did approach like our lab for this technique, and we did not work with them, but eventually they implemented it. But the technology itself is neutral, and privacy is important. And there are definitely many ways that users can control their privacy, and like control the extent to which the data are being used for various purposes. And one of my lab is doing some work on like perception of accuracy and perception of how this technology can be applied in real life. And most people are actually pretty conservative. They don't want their data to be applied. And actually, so our lab calculated how much it would cost Facebook to give out a policy, give out an option for users choose for their data not to be collected by Facebook and used in their ads targeting. I think it's about $10 per season. That's the revenue that Facebook is making on each individual users using those ads targeting techniques. And we actually talked to one of the ads people at Facebook. We said, this you should like consider this, like users should have the options to choose not to be collected the data on. And they of course refuse because like that's not in their interest. Yeah, but there are definitely a lot of concerns about privacy. There's research going on, like looking at privacies and whether we would have control in how our data are used. Yes. Theoretically, no. So the 5 models came up because they are all independent of each other. They're supposed to not be correlated with each other. But in practice, and these 5 traits do correlate with each other a little bit. But depending on the specific samples you have, sometimes extroversion will correlate with agreeableness. And the data that we use in our analysis, I checked for their correlation. And in our particular data set, they did not correlate. But it's very common for other smaller data sets for traits to be correlated. Yeah. 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 Yeah, sure. So the problem that going back to the study. So the problem with peer report in assessing similarity between between couples' personality, we also look at friends' similarity in personality. The problem was that when people use self-report, they consciously or unconsciously compare themselves against other people they know. Say, for example, you are an introverted person and you are an engineer, for example, and then you work in an engineering environment, everybody around you is introverted. And if you are like slightly extroverted, more extroverted than them, then you would consider yourself as being super extroverted. And this is the bias that would prevent us from detecting similarity in a group of people coming together and they all know each other. And this is the bias that, so in the past, like when this research was done using self-report, nobody has found any similarity in personality between couple members of friends. But using our technology, because everybody is being judged against the same standard, so writing a lot about weekend and growth, those people are considered extroverted regardless of your environment. So that gives us a more objective measure of personality that could help us detect similarity between couple members in a large population. Yeah. No, we haven't looked at that. We could. It's a lot of work. We do have data on people we collected likes at different parts of their life, and also we have participants giving us their likes at 2007, and then they came back again, take the questionnaire again, and give us their likes in 2010, for example. It's a small sample, so we haven't looked at that. It's possible, but we haven't looked at any changes in personality. And research has shown that personality is it's supposed to be a stable trait that carries throughout your life. There are definitely changes, but not like substantially. Yes. Tried looking at any other besides political ones? We've looked at values, like how traditional someone is, those like basic values. But likes did not do very good in predicting those values. The accuracy was around 0.1-ish. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.